Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of Get Your Popcorn. Another late episode, may I add. I'm sorry. Like I said in my previous episodes with I missed a week and we've been late. I've been competing for bodybuilding shows. I just finished nationals, and so I'm really behind on everything. If any of you have competed before, you know how intense things like peak weeks are and how much time goes into that. I also have been flying all around the country to do it. I was in Vancouver, Calgary, Ottawa, so I've been all around, and this took a back seat. So now that all my shows are done, I finished my nationals, we'll be back on schedule for everything. So this week we are doing the 1994 version of Little Women. This is one of my favorite childhood movies. I watch this one pretty much on an annual basis. I love it. It is so good. It's so heartwarming. This is the 1994 version. Like I said, I think this is the best one. There's been many versions. We've got a 1917, 1918, 1933, 1949, 1994, and 2019 versions of the film. The most recent one was the Greta Gerwig version. I haven't seen it. People keep telling me to watch it, but I love the 1994 version so much. It was a version, obviously, that was around when I was a kid. I'm a millennial. Yeah, so I'm just too attached to it to watch a new one. I might review it for the podcast maybe in a little while, but I thought I'd do my favorite version of the film because it's my podcast, so I get to decide. This is a story about four sisters. It's loosely based on the real life story of Louisa May Alcott, who is the author of the book. The book was released in 1868. Fun fact about Little Women and myself is in high school, I was in theater. I'm sure I do scream theater kid. I give off that kind of energy for better or for worse. But yeah, I was in theater in high school. And this was the school play we did in my grade 12 year, where I played the lead character, Jo. I pushed really hard for that and memorized the script before casting even started because I wanted to play Jo so badly because I loved this story so much growing up, particularly the film. I didn't actually read the book until I was an adult, but I watched this movie over and over and over again, just completely enamored with Winona Ryder's portrayal of Jo. And so I wanted to be Jo so bad, and I got lucky, or my theater teacher threw me a bone, but I played Jo um, in the play. I can't imagine I was any good. Then there is really standing in front of your schoolmates in a Civil War costume is a new level of embarrassing that I think I just didn't take into consideration until on the stage looking down at some high school bullies who now I still run into at Walmart sometimes. I'm like, I wonder if they remember this humiliating experience for me. But yes, it was our school play, and I actually did really enjoy the school play. It was really fun. I don't know if any of the listeners are people that were in that class, but shout out to like the most fun production I think I had all of my school year. The cast, when we did our play, got really close. It was just such a fun part of my life. And definitely, I think my favorite high school experience was working on Little Women. Performing it was a different story, but the behind the scenes stuff was awesome. And so, yeah, I have a really big soft spot in my heart for this story. So we'll get into a little pre-production of the film. It spent 12 years in development hell. Nobody wanted to touch this film. It was what was called a needle in the eye, according to one of the producers, Denise Denovi. So here's a quote from her. At the time, it was almost impossible to get a female-driven film made. They called them needle in the eye movies, where a guy would say to his wife, I'd rather have a needle in the eye than go to that movie. And this one had little and women in the title. Freaking deadly. Yeah, so nobody wanted to touch this film. There's already been a couple of versions. It's obviously been, probably 30 years since the last one came out. Once this development is starting, nobody wants it. It's a female-driven project. They don't think it's going to make any money. Some suggestions when shopping it around to studios were that they'd modernize it, where it would be the same kind of title characters with the same sort of personality traits or whatever, but it would be brought into the modern times. You just know that was some studio executive who made that decision or suggestion. Doesn't not a creative one. It's just like, well, what if they just are at the mall? Eventually, Columbia Pictures agreed to distribute the film as long as they could cast Winona Ryder, who was a big box office draw at the time in the title role. Gillian Armstrong was then selected to direct. She did not review any of the previous versions. She relied heavily on the book. And then she wanted as well as the producers wanted the focus to be like the female story of these characters and their connection to each other. This film up until this point had only ever been directed by men, and you can tell, I think there's a quality to it that it is through the female gaze, this film, that isn't present in the earlier versions. Sometimes you need a woman to tell a woman's story, and that's what Little Women is. So casting, like I said, Jo March, she's our main character, was Winona Ryder. There really was no plan B. Trini Albadaro, I'm not sure how to say it. She played Meg. She's the oldest of the March sisters. Mary Louise Parker was considered for the role, but eventually they decided not to. She had a bit of an edgy quality, they thought. Kirsten Dunst plays a young Amy. And Natalie Portman read for that, but was not cast. And Samantha Mathis plays older Amy. Reese Witherspoon was the front runner for that for quite a while until Samantha Mathis was cast. Claire Danes plays Beth. She was recommended from her producer from My So Called Life, and it was her first feature film. She did tons and tons of research for this film because her character, spoiler alert, dies, and so she did a lot of work with palliative patients and their families in order to really embody the character of Beth. Christian Bale plays Laurie. No notes. He's amazing. I love Timothée Chalamet, but it's part of the reason that I just can't watch the new version is I just can't picture anyone else as Laurie other than Christian Bale. He's so good. Eric Stoltz plays John. He read the script and he basically said, cast me in whatever. I just want to be a part of this movie. He liked it so much. Susan Sarandon plays Marmee. She almost didn't take the role due to the shooting dates. At the time, she had small kids, and this film was to be shot during the summer, and she did not want to be away from her kids, but eventually she agreed. And then we have Gabrielle Byrne. I actually don't know how to say that. As Professor Bear or Friedrich. Hugh Grant was the producer's initial pick. They really wanted him, but he was deemed too young and too good looking. Another reason I love this film is it was shot in and around Vancouver and Vancouver Island, so where I'm from. So there's many places that I know. I see the locations. The main house that they have, like the property and stuff, is, within driving distance of where I am. There's one of the scenes takes place at a historical site we have close by. It's really kind of fun when these films are shot. Often Vancouver and Vancouver Island are a lot cheaper than shooting at certain locations in the States. So we do get a lot of films up here, actually. They had a desire to make it feel real and accurate. So they used a lot of inspiration from Civil War era paintings, drawings, things like that. Christian Bale and Winona Ryder became very, very close on set and had a close friendship, which translated really well to their scenes. So much so that their friendship became so close that Winona Ryder talked about in an interview, and the director did as well. Their kissing scene later in the film was sort of awkward because they did become real friends, and that read really well on camera. By all reports and what I found from different interviews and stuff, it appears that the cast got along really well. They really enjoyed each other's company, and it was a really fun place to be. Kirsten Dunst is quoted as saying, "It felt like summer camp. I was the little sister who got to work with all the cool older girls. I remember Susan telling me that she wears a different perfume for each role, so I did that in my next couple of films." So reception for this film. Box office wise, it made $95 million on an $18 million budget. For reception, Roger Ebert, who's usually what I go by, gave it 3.5 stars, saying, "Director Gillian Armstrong finds the serious themes and refuses to simplify the story into a family formula. Little Women may be marketed for children and teenagers, but my hunch is it will be best appreciated by their parents. It is a film about how life seems to stretch ahead of us when we are young, and how through a series of choices we narrow in our destiny." We have another review from Film Magazine. This is a retroactive review that they did after the latest version of Little Women came out. sort of comparing it to the 1994 version. Watching Little Women in many ways transcends the act of enjoying a movie. You almost feel as though a time traveler when you seeing the change and transformation of the principal characters throughout their lives. This is a testament to the fact that Gillian Armstrong's work is an example of extraordinary filmmaking. Individual elements exceeding expectations to then be combined with an outstanding single artwork. Letterboxd gave it 3.9 out of 5. And my favorite little, like, I don't know, if you guys don't have Letterboxd and you get on Letterboxd, people draft great little reviews. Most of the time they're kind of jokey ones. I love it. This is my favorite one. This is from, I don't know what you would call somebody on Letter, a reviewer, a user, content creator, I'm not sure. Veronica is her little handle, and she says things I like about this movie. Christian Bale, Laurie, young Christian Bale, Theodore Lawrence. So all references to Christian Bale. I thought that was funny. This film currently holds a 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. For awards, this film did not get the love that I think it deserves just based on the fact that it was a fucking incredible year for movies in 1994. Here are some of the movies released that year: Forrest Gump, Pulp Fiction, Shawshank Redemption, The Lion King, Ed Wood, The Madness of King George, Legends of the Fall, Interview with the Vampire, and Four Weddings and a Funeral. Banger year for film. So this film, I think, kind of got lost in the wayside of all these other movies, but this film is outstanding. It's outstanding. It was nominated for Academy Awards. It was nominated for 3, lost 3. So Best Actress, Winona Ryder. She lost to Jessica Lange for Blue Sky. Costumes were nominated. They lost to Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. And original score was nominated but lost to The Lion King. I mean, come on. Like, yeah, you're going to lose to The Lion King. But yeah, this film is great. So I'm going to do my best to break down the plot of the movie. Because Joe is our main character, but we do shoot off between the sisters. So when I'm explaining the plot, especially near the end, as the girls really start to splinter off into their different sections, there's a lot of jumping back and forth between all of them. So what I've done is kind of grouped each character's story together just so that it's not as confusing, similar to the way I did in Godfather 2, where I just kind of broke it down. So when you watch the film and it's a little out of order from what I'm doing, if you haven't seen it, or that's why. Okay, so to start off, we've got the 4 sisters. Meg is the oldest. She works as a nanny. Meg's goals are to get married, have kids. Like, Meg wants this traditional life. She very much wants to move forward in her standing in society. We see a little bit of conversations about how she would like to be wealthy and has sort of an admiration to pre-war life. This film takes place in the middle of the Civil War. Then we have Joe. Joe is very non-traditional. Joe wants to be a writer or an actress. That at the time was not a thing. She very much pushes against gender conformity and gender stereotyping. She has a lot of masculine qualities, which she's always being kind of little digs from her family about, not her mom, but her other sisters and her aunt. Her job is she works as a companion for her Aunt March, and she reads many, many books to her, and basically is doing this even though she hates her Aunt March, because her Aunt March eventually will go to Europe and she'll need to take a companion, and it's Joe's dream to go and experience art and experience the world outside of her tiny town. You can see how I related to Joe in this movie, desperate to escape her small town. And then her Aunt March sort of dangles this Europe trip over her head all the time. Then we have Beth. She's the 3rd sister. She's very sweet, very shy. She's Joe's favorite sister for sure. That's very clear. She is extremely socially awkward and so shy. She actually doesn't attend school. She just homeschools herself. She plays the piano. She spent a lot of her childhood being quite sick. Then we have Amy. Amy's the youngest. She's very attention seeking. She's very painful. I hate Amy. I hated Amy in the book. I hate Amy in the movies. I hate Amy in the play I was in. I was like, God, hate Amy. There's always one. Amy's the worst. She has no redeeming qualities at all. The whole thing. I don't know. Spoiler alert. I don't like Amy. I don't get it. Like, she's the worst the whole time. Anyway, so their father is at war. So he's the Union soldier. Their mother, Marmee, is what they call her. Not sure why. And she's their, primary caretaker, although Amy really is the only one that's quite young. The other girls are all older teenagers. So the film opens up and they're having a very slim Christmas compared to what they are used to before the war. They're kind of reminiscing about life before that's happening, and they're somewhat complaining when they decide that they're going to bring what little they have to their neighbors who have even less than them. And as they walk out to do this, they see a young boy at their and by young boy, I mean teenage boy, at their neighbor's house, Mr. Lawrence. It's his grandson, Mr. Lawrence's grandson, we learn, named Laurie. His mother has died. And he is going to be living with his grandfather and studying with a private tutor named Mr. Brooks, in order for him to be able to go to college. And sort of as they're walking by, Joe and Laurie kind of make eye contact, and there's this little like spark we see right away. And she sort of waves, and that's the end of that. Later, we have a scene where the older two girls, Joe and Meg, are getting ready for a party, and Joe is curling Meg's hair. And Joe is very, she's not in the feminine ways. Like, she's really struggling with this whole activity. But they're all sitting together and they're all talking, and this is where I think a lot of the strength of the film comes, is in these like little moments of just being sisters. And I think, I come from a family where like there's four girls. And so it's very realistic in the way that the girls like interact with each other and speak with each other. It's very cute. Joe ends up burning part of Meg's hair off because she's listening to a story while she's curling her hair. Joe also burns the back of her dress, so much so that when she gets to the party, she actually does like perimeter walks around the party with her back facing the wall so that nobody can see that she burnt the backside of her dress. So once they get to the party, Joe's doing her little perimeter dance and she backs into her room because she just wants to get away from it all, and she runs into Laurie. And Laurie is there also trying to hide away from it all. And Joe immediately dives into deep conversation and tries to interrogate him because she knows that he was born in Italy, born in Europe. She's heard from his grandfather about all this stuff. And so she wants to know about, the music and the culture and all this stuff. And Laurie's sort of complaining a little bit about his coming from wealth and, having to go to college and all this stuff, where this is Joe's dream. She says, I'd commit murder to go to college. She wants to go to college. She wants to go to Europe. She wants to experience his life. And where Laurie's like from this wealthier family and is just, not interested. And so you can see very, very clearly that Laurie is like completely taken with Joe. It's very unclear through a lot of the film, I find, where Joe stands on Laurie. I mean, it's very unclear to Laurie. And I think Laurie, over the course of the film, becomes like a very good friend to Joe in Joe's eyes. She thinks that Laurie loves her for her friendship because Joe doesn't deem herself to be a person that like someone like Laurie would be attracted to, is my understanding of their relationship. So she just thinks they're just friends, where Laurie's very clearly in love with her. And so she tells Laurie about her dreams and that she wants to go and be an actress or a writer. They have a very cute scene of them. You see the waltz going on in the background. Um, and they're dancing and stuff. And then Joe and Laurie are trying to dance in the room together, but they're both trying to lead because Meg always makes Joe do the boy part when they practice. So Joe doesn't know how to do the female version of the dance. So, and then we see some scenes where Laurie's kind of being integrated into the family as like sort of a brother almost. We see where Joe's writing plays and Laurie's welcomed into their little like family theater group that they have. Meg is like slightly embarrassed of the fact that she still does this, but she does participate. There's more and more conversations from Meg that she desires life before the war and she wants a life that's nice and comfortable and more traditional. She's invited to a weekend away with a wealthy family for her friend Sally's coming out party. Not sure what a coming out party is. Anyway, so the whole family works together to put together a wardrobe for Meg for the weekend, so that she can go and attend and basically not embarrass the family or have people think they're poor. But people do think they're poor. She gets there and her clothes are so plain. And so her friend Sally loans her this dress. It's quite revealing, and Meg sort of adopts, because no one that she really comes into contact with in her regular life is there, adopts a sort of fake persona. She's like flirting with all these men and she's like enjoying the comforts of being like a wealthy lady. And while she's at this party, Laurie is there. Laurie is there. She doesn't expect him to be there. And he kind of calls her out on her little like bullshit errors. And she's really embarrassed and she kind of runs away from him. And then he chases after her to apologize, and she kind of admits to him, like, I've just been enjoying the fantasy of having all these things. Well, how nice must it be to have these things, to not be worrying about the war and not be worrying about all these things. Anyway, so Laurie kind of swears that he'll keep her secret from the family. So then we cut back, and Joe and Laurie are becoming closer and closer, and it's very clear that Joe's little sister, Amy, the pain in the ass, is very jealous of this, and she's always wanting to be included. She's clear she has quite a crush on Laurie. And Joe was like, no, like, you don't always get to come with us. Like, sometimes you stay home. And so Amy, one day when Joe and Laurie go off to the theater, decides she's going to get her revenge. And she takes all of Joe's writing. Now, let's remind you, this is the 1860s. All of Joe's writings are on paper. There's no backup. There's no hard drive. There's no nothing. There's no reference point. Joe would have to rethink all the stuff. So Amy burns this stack of writing of Joe's out of anger, and Joe comes back and rightfully so flips out and tries to hit Amy. I'm on Joe's side here. I think Amy's a little bitch. I don't like her. Anyway, they get into this massive fight, and Joe swears she's never going to speak to Amy again. Until one day, they're out skating. Joe's kind of leaving Amy behind. Amy falls to the ice, and Joe rescues her from drowning. Now, obviously, we're going to rescue our little sisters from drowning even when they're assholes. But still, Amy's still an asshole. She's an asshole through this whole movie. Meg and John, the tutor, sort of begin exchanging looks. And it's kind of clear that they're like, there's a little something going on. Meg loses a glove, it goes missing, and John apparently keeps it in his pocket. I don't know what the social protocols are on that, but that's weird as fuck. Anyway, unclear if she gave it to him or he took it. If she gave it to him, fine. If he took it, so creepy. Then they get news that Mr. March has been wounded at war, and Marmee needs to go and see him, but they can't afford it. So Marmee asks Joe to go ask their Aunt March, who's quite wealthy, for the money. Joe can't bring herself to ask her Aunt March, so she cuts off her hair and sells it for $25. Amy says, Joe, you're one beauty. So again, Amy just being an asshole. Anyway, so Mr. Lawrence helps out the family during this time, and Mr. Brooks offers to escort Marmee to the train. Meg is obviously quite pleased. It's very clear that they've developed real feelings and they are like kind of sneakily seeing each other. And during this time, Beth is volunteering with a neighboring family and ends up catching scarlet fever. Meg and Joe have had scarlet fever, so they're not that worried about it, but they send Amy to live with Aunt March because scarlet fever can kill you, especially at this time. Amy is so not concerned for her sister. Again, not concerned for her sister. Amy is very concerned and is talking to Laurie that she might get scarlet fever and die, never having kissed a boy. So Laurie makes her a promise, if you're gonna die, I'll kiss you, it's fine. This is weird. I'm not sure the exact age gap of the two of them. I think it's 5 years. And I'm pretty sure it's the age gap between the two of them, so yuck. Yuck. I know he says it in a very, like, joking way, but still, gives me the ick. So Beth continues to get worse until Marmee comes home, and she helps her sort of recover enough for Christmas. However, her heart is, according to doctors, permanently weakened. There's a thing called rheumatic heart disease from rheumatic fever that you can get from scarlet fever, which is essentially inflammation and scarring of your heart valves. And so that's how Beth's heart would have been affected. So Beth is permanently kind of invalid at this point on. There's a really beautiful scene where Mr. March comes home for Christmas, and then Mr. Lawrence gives Beth his daughter, Laurie's mother's piano, because it's sort of sat in their house unplayed for years and years, and Mr. Lawrence has always been quite taken with listening to Beth play the piano. Beautiful. The characters cry. I fucking cry. It's great. Mr. Brooks and Meg get engaged at the end of this, and then 4 years go by. And we kind of kick back in at the wedding. Meg gets married. Joe is writing. She feels unfulfilled, continues to struggle with her illness. And Amy, since her stay, when Beth had scarlet fever, has sort of taken over for where Jo was, and she is Aunt March's companion instead of Jo. Laurie has gone off to college and has come back, and he sort of corners Jo after the wedding, and he proposes her and wants to take her to London. She does not accept, and he's heartbroken. I'll read you a little dialogue. Laurie says, I have loved you since the moment I clapped eyes on you. What could be more reasonable than to marry you? Jo says, we'd kill each other. Laurie, nonsense. Jo, neither of us can keep our temper. Laurie says, I can, unless provoked. Jo says, we're both stupidly stubborn, especially you. We'd only quarrel. Laurie says, I wouldn't. And Jo says, you can't even propose without quarreling. And Laurie says, someday you'll find a man, a good man, and you'll love him and marry him and live and die for him, and I'll be hanged if I stand by and watch. And that's how they leave it. This scene is so, I mean, the acting quality in this film is unbelievable, but this is where it really shines, particularly Christian Bale. He's so good. But like, this is like, I think, a heartbreak that all women go through at some point in their life. For me, it was in like 11th or 12th grade. When you are friends with a boy and you are very convinced that you were friends with the boy, that you are friends, that he sees you for you and you're friends, and that's all it is. And that man has just been waiting in the wings for your boyfriend to fuck up or whatever. And you almost feel this sense of betrayal from, and I think this is, I saw Greta Gerwig talk about this for her version of the film, but I really do agree, and I think it is almost like a universal thing that when we go through at some point, is where we think that certain men are friends with us because they're friends with us, but they're friends with us because they're in love with us. And you feel like almost lied to, and like there is a betrayal that I think that Jo feels of popping this bubble. Whether or not she had inklings that Laurie had feelings for her or not is beside the point. She did not reciprocate those. Although she loves Laurie as a person, probably more than anybody, it is just this sort of platonic thing, and there's this like heartbreak moment where she's like, oh my god, like he just wanted something from me. And I think it's a moment that a lot of women go through. Actually, even like Matt Rife has like a whole special about he is not your friend. I'm sure people have seen that. But yeah, that's just this moment. And, Laurie walks away in a huff. Amy then announces that Aunt March is going to Europe. Jo is very excited because Jo has sort of been half promised this thing for years and years. But Aunt March decides to take Amy instead, further devastating Jo because Amy has been Aunt March's companion. And this is what Jo says. Well, of course Aunt March prefers Amy over me. Why shouldn't we? I'm ugly and awkward and I always say the wrong things. I fly around throwing away perfectly good marriage proposals. I love our home, but I'm just so fitful and I can't stand being here. I'm sorry. There's just something wrong with me. I want to change, but I can't, and I just will never fit in anywhere. And I think this is why, like, she just didn't see, like, the Laurie thing coming, is I just don't think Jo views herself in a way that she would be, like, sexualized by any man. Like, I think she just, like, not in a pick-me way, but, like, is one of the boys in her own head. Like, she just isn't, she just feels awkward and different, and I think this is part of what is, like, so universal about this story and so timeless, is I do think that there's a lot of women, particularly, like, if you're like me, if you're, like, from a smaller town and you, like, don't fit the vibe and you just feel awkward and uncomfortable and you wanna crawl out of your own skin every day because you just, like, you want so desperately to be like the other people around you, but you're not, and when you do that, you feel so fake and disgusting, but you also feel so sad and lonely because you don't fit in. And you want to fit in, but it just is so inauthentic. And I think that is like there's like a universality to that in terms of, those of us that don't fit into sort of like whatever the mainstream is at the time. And I think that's why Little Women has this like lasting impact, particularly Jo. Because I think at one time or another, we've all been Jo, where we're like desperate to fit in, but we know that if we fit in, we're gonna hate it. And whatever circumstances that is, whether or not it's the way you look or the way you dress or the music you like or, your career path or whatever. Like, for me, like I felt connected to this character at many moments of my life and felt exactly like that. Like, I'm so feeling so awkward and so like in your own skin all the time. Particularly when I was younger, I think one of the nice things about going into your 30s is you don't feel that way as much anymore. You have moments of it, but you just sort of begin to like have a lot more like acceptance and self-awareness. But I think when you're like late teenager, early 20s, and you just want to crawl out of your own skin and die, um, it's really relatable. And I think that feeling is true in 1868 and is true in 2025. So this is where Marmee encourages Joe to go move to New York, go pursue writing, like go do something, get out of here, basically get out here, get out of the headspace, like go. You're meant for bigger things, Joe. So she moves to New York in the hopes of publishing a book. She ends up meeting a professor there named Friedrich Baer. He is a poor man, an immigrant, but he's very, very cultured, and he begins to show the opera and writings and literature and philosophy, and she's fascinated by him. He's a much older man than her. She's writing these little short stories, these like fanfic Victorian smutty books. Essentially, they're being published in magazines that are trashy, but they're making her money. So she shows him these stories and he is like horrified. He's like, "What are you doing? Like, you can't continue to do this. Like, this is trash. You're better than this. You should write what you know." And she's really hurt by his feedback. And so she kind of leaves in a huff. She walks out of their last date. And when she gets home, she gets a letter from Marmee that Beth is really sick and she needs to come home. So she does. So this is where we break apart a little bit. So I'm just going to go back we're going back to the March house. Beth is very, very sick. And Joe is there at bedside as Beth's dying. And we all cry. If you've ever seen that episode of Friends, this is where Joey puts the book in the freezer, guys. This is the book in the freezer moment. It's in there with The Shining. So Beth says, "If God wants me to be with him, there is none who will stop him. I don't mind. I was never like the rest of you, making plans about great things I'd do. I never saw myself doing anything much. Not a great writer like you." Joe says, "Beth, I'm not a great writer." And Beth says, "Oh, you will be. Oh, Joe, I've missed you so. Why does everyone want to go away? I love being home, but I don't like being left behind, and now I'm the only one going ahead. I'm not afraid, and I can be brave." And I'll cry, and you'll cry, and all the characters cry. Holy shit. Gets me every time. So after Beth dies, Joe begins to write down her life story, inspired by what Beth said, and she sends it to Professor Bear. Meg at this time has twins, and while this is all happening, Laurie meets Amy in Europe, and he attempts to kind of hit on her and flirt with her. He's become this like party boy, kind of wasting his family money since Joe rejected him. He's in his villain era. Amy sort of calls him out on it and basically is like, "You're just like wasting your family money, like you're not being true to who you are, you're just trying to get into like our family, like yada yada yada." So he leaves her alone, but then he writes her a letter saying like, "Let me prove myself to you. Like, I'm gonna work hard for my grandfather, and then I'll come back. We'll talk about this again." So Amy has to stay in Europe because Aunt March is quite ill, so she can't come back to be with Beth. And when Beth dies, Joe writes Laurie telling her of Beth's death, and at the end of the letter, kind of asking him to come home. But Laurie only reads the beginning bit, and then he goes back to be with Amy. Joe's kind of feeling a bit of regret and thinking a lot about Laurie at this time. And of course, Laurie's now moved on with Amy. This is like the third movie we've read about where one sister takes another sister's sloppy seconds. Is this happening out there, guys? Is this really happening, or is this like a movie thing? Because the amount of vomit that would come out of my mouth if anyone that came near my sister came near me is the limit does not exist. Ew. Don't date people your sister used to date. That's so fucking weird. And even I guess it's not even really date, but this is very like Kardashian, Kourtney Kardashian, Kim Kardashian core here. Yeah, don't date a guy that's only with you because your sister rejected him. That's weird, dude. It's weird. Amy, see what I'm saying here is like Amy has no redeeming quality. She's just a bitch and then she marries Laurie. Like that's her arc. Like she sucks. She's the worst sister. Meg is kind of a pain in the ass too, but Amy is so much worse. Anyway, so they get married, then they come back together. Aunt March dies. Jo is obviously shocked that her little sister has married Laurie. But she seems happy for them. Again, weird. I don't know if she shouldn't be happy for them as much as, like, I would just be really off-put if my little sister married somebody that was in love with me for years. Like, that just seems weird. Am I crazy? That's weird, right? Anyway, so Aunt March leaves her house to Joe, and Joe decides that she's gonna build a school out of this house. So Professor Bear, off in New York, has received Joe's writings. He's taken them to a publisher who has agreed to publish the book. So he's going to come, apologize to Joe, and bring her the good news. And when he gets there, he is coming to see Joe, and there's a misunderstanding where he believes that Joe has married Laurie because of something their housekeeper Hannah says. So here's the dialogue. Joe says, "My book, someone's publishing my book. Hannah, somebody's publishing my book. But it came without a letter. How did it arrive?" Hannah says, "A foreign gentleman brought it. Odd name, Fox or Bear." "Bear," Joe says. "Did you ask him to wait?" Hannah says, "I thought he was one of Miss Amy's European friends. He came with a wedding gift. I told him Miss March and Mr. Laurie were living next door." Joe says, "Oh, Hannah, you didn't." So, because this is a movie, he's still within running distance. So she sprints down and she catches up with him. She explains the misunderstanding and she tells him she loves him. And he says, "But I have nothing to give you. My hands are empty." And then Jill holds his hand and she says, "Not empty now." I hate that line of dialogue. And then they kiss and the movie ends. That's my bone to pick with this film, is I hate that it's so cheesy. But it's good. Oh, it also starts raining when they kiss. So I love this movie. The last 4 minutes, not my fave, but it's really good. It's hard when I do these movies with a lot of like, this isn't the most like plot driven film. I don't know if that makes sense, but like there isn't a ton happening. It's like little moments and little conversations, and the like just the natural feeling of this film is what makes it so good and what sort of sets it apart from other films. The acting, obviously, like we've discussed the cast, like the caliber of actors in this film is insane. A lot of them early on in their careers before we really saw them shine. Christian Bale, who in my opinion is the greatest actor of his generation, ranked second by Bradley Cooper. Yeah, this is a great film. It's worth a watch. There's some Christmas elements to it, so I like to watch this around the holidays every year. Yeah, I highly recommend this one. I will get around to the 2019 version. If you guys like that one, drop me some comments about it, because I have been scared to take the plunge, because you know how I feel about remakes. Even though this is a remake, I know. I know. You don't need to tell me I'm a hypocrite. It's fine. It's the second remake, 2 weeks in a row. I'm eating crow over here. But yeah, if you like the 2019 version, drop a comment. Let me know if you like it or not. Thanks so much. Thanks for being patient with me now that I'm done all my shows and Nationals is complete. We'll be back on our Thursday schedule. I hope everybody has a really great day.